Hi, everyone. Welcome to TLD Cast. I'm your host today, Cara North, and I am joined with Mr. Jonathan Rock, who is doing me a solid, joining me today on camera because I am still a little bit sick and I don't know how long my voice can go today. So again, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Today, what we're going to talk about is something that I think is really important for us to talk about. I have been reading a lot in the different classes that have been taken at Ohio State about this term called discursive practices. And essentially all that means is what makes a profession a profession? Like what are kind of the knowledge of the body of knowledge rather of a profession that makes it what it is. And what I thought we would do today is, if you're not familiar, ATD, the Association for Talent Development, has released a new capability model to talk about what they feel like a professional person in the learning development space should have. And so I was really surprised as I went through it. I know J-Rock, he has went through it too. And so we're going to just be talking through kind of what they currently have on the model. We're going to be talking about what you all think should be on the model, what shouldn't be on the model, and really dive in deep. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me.
Cool. All right. Can everyone see the capability model? I do have it on the screen, I think. And then if you would like to explore it on your own, I made a little button below the video there, the ATD Capability Model that you can click on, and you can go ahead and open for yourself. But a lot of people coming in. Hey, Jack. Hey, Kim. Hey, Kara. Hey, Dan Kecken, I see you coming in. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And Rubina, did I miss you? Hey, Rubina, good to see you too. All right. So again, voice is crackling, so I apologize. I do have some lovely water, so I'll keep it trying to go as much as I can. So if you haven't looked at this ATD capability model, if you look at it, basically you have three different components. One is the building personal capability, which we'll start talking about here in a moment. And the other two is developing professional capability and impacting organizational capability. So J-Rock, what in the world does building personal capability look like to you?
Well, before we jump straight into the three domains, it is interesting to note that they changed the title of this tool. Before it was the competence model, and every 5 years they go through and look at this stuff again and try to update it and keep it so that it's current to what's going on right now and to 5 years in the future. Like what's going to hold for the next 5 years. So it's kind of predictive. But the idea of capability as opposed to competence, like type in the chat what you guys think the difference is between those two terms. The way they try to kind of describe it was competence is like what you can do now, what you're good at. And capability is kind of like your how well you can do now and moving forward, how well you'll be able to adapt or take in new skills, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that Jonathan Hill is here today, because this actually also kind of bred out of a conversation that we had about just kind of the role of different organizations in learning and development that kind of own this space. And by organizations, I mean professional societies. So with ATD, my opinion is that I feel like they try to be everything for everyone. Whereas Jonathan Hill kind of told me that with the CIPD, that it's very kind of structured and a little bit more funneled down, which I find very interesting. So I do think that because there is kind of that wide breadth, we do see that on this ATD capability model. But yeah, I agree with like what I think Rubina and Joe both said about their skills as a person. So they like to spin on the capability versus the competency model that they used to have.
I think like if you think of like the building personal capability and how is it different than developing professional capability, think of the show. You guys ever watch the American TV show House? where he's like a doctor. It's kind of based on Sherlock Holmes, where he's like really smart at what he does, but he has horrible bedside manner and he like turns people off left and right. He'd be high in the second domain of this and low in the first. The first domain is pretty much how not to be an a-hole, I guess. How skilled are you at communication, emotional intelligence, leadership and collaboration? And some of those, you'll see that category kind of branch across all three domains. Collaboration and leadership, there's a version of those in each of them. But yeah, right on, Jack. He does nail that American accent. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, so let's just hop in and just take a look. So we're right now in the communication one. There's 8 different knowledge and skill statements, and going through, you can kind of see these here. But before we went live, J-Rock and I were kind of talking about the format of what these look like, and these are some run-on sentences from hell, are they not?
Yeah. Yeah, we were laughing. We felt like they kind of had and pox, like a lot of the sentences. You know, they can't just have a straight up sentence stating a simple idea. They have to like make sure they cover, like you were saying, every possibility. So you've got 3 different variants of something connected at a wasp waist with just an actual thought, and then another list of things that could possibly be variations of that. So just keep that in mind as you read through this. You know, if you have to read the sentence a couple times before you understand what the crap they say you need to do, that's not you being dumb. That's somebody being a overly flowery writer, perhaps. Somebody's trying to gain some credibility through purple prose. Is my humble, maybe not so humble, but that's my arrogant opinion.
Well, it's very, very academic. I mean, reading this, it's very academic. It's very about, again, casting that wide net, I think, is how, as I was reading through, like, that's what I saw. And I just want you to look at these. And again, I won't necessarily read them to you because you all should be able to see them. But, you know, for the podcast version of this, you know, skill in using communication strategies that inform and influences audiences. Skill in applying persuasion and influencing techniques to gain agreement, commitment, and or buy-in from stakeholders. Now, I'm asking, again, everybody here, what makes this L&D specific? These communication principles, is there anything in there that you're like, yes, that's absolutely 100% L&D specific? Are these communication statements something that can be transferred to different professions?
I mean, I do think that they apply in that, like, communication is like the number one thing we're going for. I got an idea or a skill or a mindset in my head and I want to put it in your head. But to your point about specifically for L&D, like, these are things you need anytime you work with people, with humans, you know, like, you need to be able to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan Hill says that the CIPD refreshed their model to simplify it and make the language more accessible, which is great because, again, I think that's awesome because you want to know what it is that it's asking you to do, right? And I feel like that's, if you're in L&D, that's something you do every day, right? You want to make sure that whatever you're creating is something that people can understand and get the information that they need in order to be better performers or do their job better or what have you. So Kim, I think you might hit the nail on the head there.
That is it.
Business speak. Yeah.
Well, I'm not just here to crap on it, right? Like, they probably had the goal of being accurate and they wanted to make sure, okay, I don't want it to be misconstrued or whatever. And like, I'm not in the academic world. I'm just a hardworking schlub trying to get the stuff to work down in the trenches. And for me, it's kind of ironic that in a section that touts the ability to communicate, you have to read the sentences a couple times to parse them. So I don't know if that's I don't know. There's that whole dynamic where if you're in an academic circle and you're trying to, everything you do is challenged and you're trying to prove your credibility to your peers, maybe part of that is, you know, using a large vocabulary and having all the best words. But sometimes the most direct line between point A and B is just taking yourself out of it not trying to prove anything to anybody, just be invisible as a writer and just let the ideas flow.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And Rubina, I love your question. You must be like kind of on the same wavelength. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. So I'm putting a pen in it. I see it. I don't want you to know that it's, we see it. So we're going to be talking about that here in a minute. Ann Rollins, thanks for joining us today. Haven't seen you in a while. And Ann Coppins, thank you so much for being here too. So again, communication, we got that in there. Let's go ahead and hop over to everybody's favorite topic, emotional intelligence. So in emotional intelligence, we have eight different statements here for emotional intelligence and decision making. What do you think about this?
Yeah, skill in assessing and managing one's own emotional state. Like, I think that's specific to being a human.
Yes.
As we go through these, I feel like for me, one of the biggest things that hit me as I was reading this is it can get overwhelming and intimidating thinking like, if I want to be in this field, do I have to master each of these? Yeah. And one of the things Cara and I were talking about is like, there are people that have spent a whole lifetime at the top of their career in just one of these skill or knowledge points underneath the topics. So yeah, what do you guys make of that?
I think Jonathan Hill doesn't care much for it, based on his comments.
Is it doing a Turing test on him?
Now Joe brings up a great point. Joe Cook brings up an absolute great point about, it says skill in and not expert at. So it will be interesting to see how the ATD certification shift. So if you're not familiar, in the United States, ATD, you can get two certifications. You can get the APTD, which is the Associate Professional of Learner something. I'm sorry, don't know off the top of my head, but essentially that was in the old competency model. You picked 3 different topics to test in, and that showed that you had like a depth of knowledge in those particular topics. Whereas the CPLP, which is the certified I brain fog today. CPLP, basically that was the entire competency model. So I do think that it'll be really interesting to see, how do you do a multiple choice test on some of these statements? What would that even look like?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, can you multiple choice test whether somebody is skilled in managing their emotional state?
I don't know.
Like, if they just line them all right out and just write FU on there, okay, you failed that question.
Maybe it wasn't a good idea to have Jonathan Rock on here with me today.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. We need somebody more intellectual, clearly.
No, I'm just teasing.
I know. I know, sister. You get the schlub today, guys.
This is what happens when you all get sick and need your friends to help you.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, so I do think that I like, I guess, the influence of this. So again, I don't want this to be, like he said earlier, we don't want to just hate on it, but I just want people to know that this is what currently the standards I'm using that are out there. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later, Rubina, about your question, but I don't think a lot of people know that this is what ATD kind of settled on. I know that they had put out for feedback and they were looking to get different voices at the table, but I feel like you have to be kind of part of that ATD culture, like at the national level or at your local chapter, to even really know about it. So part of my reason for talking about this today is, again, just to let people know about it, that it's out there. And then again, just to have that conversation about it, I think is important. And I'm going to switch to collaboration and leadership now.
All right. Are we going to go through all of them? Because it's going to be.
I don't think so. This will probably be the last one in this one, and then I'm going to get into that tech one that we were talking about here.
All right.
A little bit earlier, J-Rock. So in collaboration and leadership, obviously you have to have those skills, I feel like, to be a good L&D professional, right? So yeah, I mean, this makes a lot of sense, but is this something that everyone will have? I don't know.
Well, it sounds like from what you said from earlier versions that they do say, all right, pick the 3 that matter to you and we'll test you on those.
For the
so
lower
there is
level
a realization.
certification. Yeah,
for the lower level. Okay.
Yes, but the way that they did the CPLP was you had to pass each of the different pieces of
domains
it.
or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot.
No, I agree with On.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, Coppin said that project management seems important. Yeah, let's just take a peek in there real quick. There's 6 in project management. See, I don't have a problem with the project management ones. Those make more sense to me.
Those are concrete.
Yeah. Risk, feasibility, consequence, integrated resource, tasks, and timelines. Yeah, and Rubina, that's very true too, because there are different organizations. Project management's been around for a long time. Did they take some of this from the PMI, Project Management Institute? I don't know. They may
totally fair if they did, I think. I mean, that's one of the things that's the big picture that's emerging from all this specific stuff is this is a great big hairy beast that we're all trying to ride, and we don't know. It's hard to find all the borders, and I applaud ATD for trying to encapsulate it and contain it and say but just think of all the things that we're asked to either at least have passing knowledge of or be great at in order to achieve the goals of this profession. It's a monumental task to look at all the parts of it and try and quantify what do you need to actually know to be good at.
Right. So I went ahead and I want to spend some time in the tech because I feel like a lot of the people that are here are probably techies like us. I know a lot of you are e-learning developers or spend a lot of time in that space. I'm going to read this and then I want to kind of unpack it a little bit. Skill in developing artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, augmented reality, and mixed reality that are ethical and free of bias.
You guys all got that, right? Am I the only one not doing any of that yet?
Yeah, exactly. And Coppins, good luck, right? That's exactly what we were like, what? What you said earlier about that, John J. Rock, you said the people that do this are out on a yacht somewhere.
Yeah, they're out on their yacht trying to figure out, which company they're going to buy next. A lot of the things that I'm learning about, it's all right, I can take a weekend and I can dig deep on Mager or the Bloom's taxonomy or whatever. I can take some time out to try and skill up on something. But when you're saying machine learning algorithms, right? You got to learn Python and data science and R and all this stuff just for one of the side related things. That's where my brain starts pushing back and saying, all right, no, there definitely needs to be people that have those skills helping us out in this field. But this is not one of those things where you have to put it on a checklist and say, I need to be good at all of these things before I can get a job or be successful as an L&D practitioner. That seems like a really high bar to me.
Right. Well, do you think this is like their kind of like stake in the claim of trying to make this a little bit more evergreen, to think
Oh
that
yeah.
in 5 years that this is going to be something more? Or what do you think? I don't know. I mean, this is just really, it's really
Like
interesting.
from my perspective, just as a guy working at a company who I've got to, run our LMS, I've got to be able to prove that my workers are qualified to do their jobs. Like if I went to my boss and said, "Hey, can I get some time and money so that I can develop my artificial intelligence skills?" He would just stare at me like, "What? Do your hobby on your own time." Like I don't know where the rubber meets the road in my situation for that. Right? Like maybe higher up in organizations where you're like, you have budget and you have clout and you're like, this is the future. And if we jump on this now, our whole company will be more ready for that kind of thing. But like for right now, heck, I'm creating art in PowerPoint because I don't have an Adobe license, right? Like that is not the hill that I'm going to die on, is trying to get AI funding.
That's a really good point. And I love the side conversation between Anna and Rubina of what's going on, because I feel like currently all this stuff has bias in it anyway. The people who are making it are making it in a biased way. So if the
Is it
people
made by
that are
humans?
the people that are currently making it, if they're making it biased, how on earth are we supposed to make it free of bias, right?
Well, I saw an interesting video, a guy explaining the danger of those algorithms. And long story short, they fed it a bunch of pictures of dogs versus wolves. And to say, this is a dog, this is a wolf, that kind of thing. And the thing misidentified a few dogs as wolves. And they were like, well, how is it making a mistake? And they were able to look at what it was doing. And the key criteria that it was looking at was, is there snow in the background? Because the machine learning picked up the pictures of wolves had snow, the pictures of dogs didn't. And so that was how it was deciding. And like they had no idea how it was making its decision. And it's like, think about AI that's used for banking, approving your mortgage. Or how about the AI that is in place right now for caseload with legal courts and that kind of stuff, and how those decisions, like, we don't know. It may not be a human bias that's existing in the machine. It may just be its own AI machine bias that it's looking at the wrong thing,
Yeah. Now, again, AI is in this. And I when I saw that, I was like, I have to tell people. Like, I have to tell people that it's in there, because I don't think people knew that. Well, I don't think a lot of people knew that it was in there.
Sure.
So I went ahead and I put on here now what they have for instructional design, and going through it, it's got, good old Addie and Sam, needs assessment, different modalities of blended or classroom or MOOCs, which I still didn't know those were still around. I guess they are.
Do MOOCs work? Has anybody here finished a MOOC? I have started like 8 of them. And
yeah, I'm a MOOC dropout.
Yeah, I'm a MOOC.
Ann and Joe, you all are better people than we are. I
have not taken one of Ann's MOOCs. I bet her MOOCs
I
rock.
bet an Ann Rollins MOOC would be amazing. I bet it really would be. No joke. I bet
I would at least make it 2 months into one of those.
Yeah. Other different things on here is about different blueprints, visual representations. This is a big one, how to get information from SNEs.
Yeah, but read the sentence.
Wow.
So basically they could have wrote working with SMEs.
Skill in eliciting and using knowledge and information from subject matter experts to support and or enhance learning. And
or is even worse than and pox. Doesn't it sound so like non-confident, like insecure? And or, I mean, it could be an or, but there's also a case where it could be an and. I don't know. I'd rather screw it up than look wishy-washy like that.
Joe brings up a great point about the virtual piece of it for the virtual classrooms. Let me go back up to that and let's see what it said about it. Let's see, self-directed. Where was that?
That's a good point too that Joe makes while you're searching for that. About they haven't really mentioned virtual teams, virtual classrooms, remote working.
They have virtual reality, though, to go
Yeah.
with your machine learning. Yeah, that's really interesting, Joe Cook. They don't have anything in there about virtual classrooms yet. I know they have books and publications about it in the ATD bookstore. It's interesting.
Maybe we just haven't got to that part yet.
Maybe. Is anybody surprised about anything on here about the instructional design one? Scroll back up. Sure, I can do that, Anne. Is that what you wanted? Okay.
Would you consider that an instructional modality?
I don't know. I think it would just kind of depend. I do think that it is definitely a modality depending on how your organization is set up. But yeah. Yeah, I agree, Ann Rollins. The VR experience is a real stretch for a typical ID. Going back to J-Rock's example about, still needing PowerPoint to build things. I mean, if he went in and said, hey, I need an Oculus.
Yeah.
Research. So I'm not sure, Rubina, how they came to this. I know that I saw the advertisements to be part of the team to talk about it. But as far as how they got to this, I don't know. And I don't want to speak poorly about it because I don't know.
Jonathan Hill asks, is this in parts about getting in front of technologies perceived to be the future? Oculus Rifts for everyone. That's a hard one because how much of it is hotness and hype versus stuff people will actually be using, right? I mean, I've seen videos of VR being used to train Walmart employees for Black Friday and things like that. And I think that's very powerful and effective. But again, where that's way off down at my level, what I'm doing day to day.
I'm digging through for Kara's question about accessibility. If they have anything in here about accessibility, looking through it, I didn't see anything, but that doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yeah, well, accessibility is really hard, and we're all still learning our AI, right?
I told you can't make me laugh. I can't.
Sorry. One of my overarching, and this may develop as it goes on, but one of my overarching just gut feels on this is take this stuff in, look at it, and challenge each of it. And the blade that I use on it is, how will this help me achieve what I'm trying to do for my students? Because if at the end of the day, all it does, especially some of the more academic stuff, if all it does is make me an actually person, where I just say actually and then drop a conversation on its ear by correcting somebody in a way that they can't stand, then I did it for my pride. I didn't really do it for my students. So, life is short. You only get to read so many books. If you get a bad one, throw it at the wall and move on to the next one. And there's a whole lot going on here, and I applaud their attempts to try and wrangle this beast and try and say, here are the borders. But again, don't feel like you need to master all of this stuff. Don't feel like you're not a pro if you're not 100% at everything on here. Just figure out what you're trying to do and study the stuff that will inform how you do that, because that's the stuff you'll be interested in anyway. If you're reading a bunch of theory that doesn't connect, I mean, maybe it will later. Maybe it's just part of that big, net full of stuff we carry around behind our heads, and later on the pieces will interconnect and form Voltron, and it'll make sense. So I guess it's valuable to have it in there. But for the most part, I think we need to be super focused on, we've only got so much time, we've only got so much attention, and we need to spend it on the things that are actually going to make a difference for the people that have to endure our training. I'm
trying to find empathy for Rubina. I figured it would be and the emotional intelligence, I don't really see it there. Now over here which I do like that they have a cultural awareness and inclusion. It talks about being able to adapt and adjust perspective, but it doesn't use the word empathy, which is kind of interesting. Wonder how they selected, like what's making it, and why are we leaving in the cutting room floor? Because I do think that is more something. And to Kara's point about accessibility, I mean, yes, that's the world that we definitely live in, especially in university land, 508. But yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, Ann Rollins, I agree. I do think that they've missed the mark on some of them. Now, again, we've kind of went into two different domains. This last one here is very much, I call this the coaching one. I know that a big bucket of the ATD population does coaching, which is fine. Coaching's great, but I don't necessarily always, again, I just feel like they try to cast a wide net, and they try to be a professional home for everyone. And another reason that I feel that way is if you look at what sessions are at ATD ICE, a lot of them are very HR based. I have a friend who's doing one about downsizing with dignity, which is a great topic.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not something that I would think about seeing at DevLearn, for example, right? So I don't know. So here's just a little taste of this talent development bucket. And I'll just start here with this like business insight.
Have a good one, Joe. Thanks for being part of it today.
Oh, see you, Joe Wendell. Thanks for being here. Jonathan Hill, you do have a great question about if this model is used in a punitive way. Because if you fail to meet the model, you fail at your job. Now, I haven't done any analysis with this one, but I did do some analysis with the old ATD Competency Model, and I basically coded 25 job descriptions for instructional designers.
Oh, yeah.
And I found that not very many of the different pieces of the competency model aligned to the job descriptions that were out there. Now, I don't know if I would find something similar or different.
That would be an interesting study, is to like not only come out with all the parts of it as they've tried to do, which think about how scary it is that like all of this stuff is out there. This is all part of the job, and we are coming up with stuff that they left out. It's crazy. But like, what if we had all the pieces, but we also had them weighted? Like, these are the ones that are most in demand in this sector. Because I do think like there's almost like 3 or 4 different fields we're talking about here. Like for me, one of my biggest thing is compliance training. Like I have to make sure that we are compliant with all the rules and regulations of the United States and the countries where we sell product. And so for us, compliance is the big thing. Another organization, or even another part of the same business, like if I was dealing with field force and the salespeople, like they would be more based on the whole coaching and performance enhancement and, getting better at their jobs, which is a world I'm interested in, but I don't really see that much. And there's so many parts and pieces to learning and development. Some people, like I'm kind of lucky, I get to roll out my training and everybody has to take it because it's compliant. So I got a captive audience, right? But others, they may be dealing with a situation where they are creating content and putting it up there and hoping that it meets the needs and that it gets clicked on, like a selected content from the user. So it's almost like we're trying to map the borders of 4 or 5 different nations that happen to be near each other as opposed to one specific discipline.
The data and analytics piqued my interest, so I went ahead and clicked on that and look at that. But knowledge and principles of big data, predictive modeling, data mining, machine learning, and business intelligence. I just think that these don't belong in the same sentence. Like, you know what I mean? Like business intelligence, you don't necessarily need to have big data for that sometimes. I mean, business intelligence can be observation, or it can be a performance test, or it can be a factor of things that doesn't have to have this like big data. I feel like anytime you put big data in something, it makes it more kind of hairy and nebulous, right?
I'm just wondering if L&D positions pay enough to get the guys and gals that can do this. It's like, well, we need someone who can do this, but they're like, well, I've got a degree in that, and here are the people that are hiring me, and I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and that's a whole nother question for another day, is just these job descriptions right now. I mean, they want unicorns. They want people that can, manage the learning function. They want people that can create the e-learning product at the end. They want people that can evaluate. They want it all, but to the point of most of the people in the chat, they don't pay enough. I mean, that's
we need pizza delivery drivers must drive a Lamborghinis.
Yeah. I don't know about that. But yes, they do want the one person. And I feel like when did this happen? Because I know like back in the Stone Age when I started, I was assigned to do learning management stuff, and then I built e-learning modules. And that was like all of my job. That was it. And I stayed in my little bucket, and I stayed with my blinders on, and I did my work every day. But
and
now
we did e-learning so we didn't have to come in and do an instructor led on third shift, right?
Right. Yeah. And brings up a great point about the budgets. I mean, just the budgets to support the infrastructure to get all of this. If this is what good looks like, if this is like the standard of what we're supposed to be doing and what we're supposed to be hitting, I mean, what?
Yeah. Hey, can you take a break from designing that self-driving car so you can come help me with this e-learning module?
I told you, you can't make me laugh.
Sorry. I can get right on that.
Yeah. Let's look at future readiness here. See, I can get behind some of this. This is about making sure that you're keeping your own skills up to date, that you are looking at different techniques.
I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Yatunde says, I believe this is indicative of the rapid evolution of the L&D space. I think we might all be going through some of that. The technology is like on that exponential hockey stick curve, and we're all trying to, like, we're getting, as different technologies emerge and come onto the marketplace, we're getting better and better stuff before we have the thoughtful time to know how to implement and apply it.
Right.
Yeah, we're all pucks.
That's true. Oh, I don't know. I mean, it makes me very overwhelmed just looking at this, because as somebody, again, that's been doing this for a long time now, it's hard, because you want to feel like you're the best, and you want to feel like you are on the cutting edge and you're doing everything that you can doing. But, to your point, I don't know machine learning, and I don't know any of this stuff, and I don't have the time during my workday to learn it.
Not only do I not have those skills, it's like Dunning-Kruger effect. Like, I don't even see how it totally fits into my world. Like, how is my ability to teach a machine how to do something, how does that apply to me doing a new employee orientation?
Yeah. Well, and Anne Rollins, I mean, machine learning is a field of study. She's absolutely right. VR development is a career. Absolutely. Being a data analyst is a career path. So are we just supposed to be able to just skim the surface, or what is good enough and what is not good enough?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of pressure to kind of be that master of all, but then be a master of nothing. I completely agree with you. It's just, and another thing is my heart goes out to I keep calling them kids, but the people that are going to get these master's degrees in this space when programs do not have any of this in there, right? They're still doing literature reviews instead of building e-learning modules.
Yep. Well, my heart goes out to people new in the field too, because like I remember when I started, most of us, we start doing something else and someone says, hey, you're pretty good at this training thing, you should do this part, and then that's how you fall into it. I know there's some people that studied for it and they went straight into it, and I'm glad for those people, but like I was one of those accidental ones. And I feel like when you start off, you come in and you're like, all right, I want to establish myself, I want to learn the rules of my community, and I want to kind of display that I am one of them too. And you'll get a lot of advice saying, well, you must do it this way and you can't do it that way. And it can be easy to just take on somebody else's take, maybe someone who's more established, and maybe they're just venting a pet peeve and they don't really do that, but like on that day they're like, oh man, I hate the click next button, that shouldn't be in an e-learning, right?
I knew you were going to bring that up sometime.
Yep. And then you take it as a rule, oh, people who are good at this don't ever use a next button, and like, because you're trying to prove that you belong and you're trying to learn from your mentors and stuff. And I feel like, this kind of stuff, while it's important to know what are all the borders, don't take it on as a neophyte and say, I need to be good at all this, or I'm not good. Laser focus on the project you're working on the training you have to develop, or on the ones that are part of your job now or that you maybe want to do next year. And maybe be aware of the rest, but don't focus on it, and don't feel like you arrive in this business by ticking off all the boxes and being a master of everything. Everyone's got the thing that lights them up and that you're interested in. And like, if you chase that focus, leverage your strength and go after that, you'll get a lot farther than if you just spend hours just poring over stuff that's like sandpaper on your brain. That's my take on it anyway.
I want to read what Ann Rollins said. And Ann Rollins, I'm so glad you're here. You're always just like such a ray of sunshine. You always have the greatest things to say. But she talks about the awareness and understanding of the learning of this. So she says it's different than being a practitioner within the tech vector. So just having the awareness, she thinks is good enough. And I completely agree. And also want to talk a little bit what Jonathan Hill was asking about if this model would help you starting out. I know Cara Spray said it would scare her to death. I think it would scare me to death too. If I had this like day one, I'm an ID now, look at me. Oh my gosh, this is really overwhelming. What have I done with my life?
Oh man. Yeah, never show this to your boss, Rubina. Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna pay for having this episode.
I think Elise might kick me off here. I don't know, but I didn't mean for it to go as kind of negative as it did. But again, I don't think a lot of people knew some of the stuff that was on here. And I wanted people to know that it's out there. I want people to look at it. And I thought we could have a conversation about, are these things in bounds? Are they out of bounds? Like, what makes us us? And the question that Rubina asked earlier about, are we moving toward a standard of L&D? It's hard because good learning looks different at Jonathan Rock's organization than it does at where I currently work. And that's for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of factors in that. There's staffing, there's budgets, there's deadlines, there's the way the business is set up to make money versus being an educational institution. There's a lot of factors at play here. So how can we come together to make stuff that is something that we can all kind of agree these are kind of baseline qualities in being a learning and development professional? And I will say, I have up here the lifelong learning.
Yeah.
I agree with all of those. I think that's a great way for us all to get on the same page.
I agree. That one stands out. Well, I think maybe that should be part of the third domain, the organizational learning, is understand what it takes for your group to win the game they're playing. Like when I do my new employee orientation, and I work at a animal health pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, and one of the first slides I show in the new employee orientation, I show a picture of a guy working at Zappos, and he's on a scooter just cruising through his office. He's got like a Thor mask on and the Skeletos, and he just looks like he's having a ball. And I show that picture, and then I show a picture of a guy at a furniture manufacturer drilling a chair. And I ask the questions, like, do you think the guy in the first picture has to answer to OSHA for the way that he's cruising through the office, or do you think that he's accountable to the FDA? And then I say, well, this guy making a chair, that's a little more close to what we do. But what happens to the value of the chair if one of his hairs falls on it? Right? The value of the chair is durable, right? But if you're talking about something you're going to inject into an animal that's either companion or going to be eaten, a petable or an edible, it's a lot more important. And so then I hit him with like a picture of the guy who's all gowned up in like the aseptic core where they're like in the spacesuits. And the point I'm making is that like we don't win our game the way Zappos does. Zappos wins their game by being weird like that. Like that's one of their mottos is be weird, and they have like quirky customer relations on the phones and that kind of thing. So part of it is knowing how does your company win their game? How does your part of it win their game? And if you start with that domain, then you'll have another prism that you can look at the others through and say, all right, my company's not going to win the domain if I'm trying to skill up on, AI. I need to be a much better facilitator. I've got, leaders that are coming up and they, it's their first time managing people or whatever. I need to be able to do, coaching. I need to be able to do, whatever the domain is, figure out what is my company paying me to do? And how do I make their headaches go away using this stuff? And that might help focus which parts of this capability model are more applicable to your situation now or the company that you want to get hired into.
I think that's the golden nugget. Thank you. That was excellent, because it is so important to know kind of what success looks like at your company. And again, what does good look like at your company, and being able to translate that and making sure, again, I'm a big fan of a high tide raises all boats. So, enabling your team, upskilling your people, making sure that people are able to contribute to that vision, I think is so critical, and also very difficult to do well, right?
Yeah. I can't believe I came up with something profound.
Yeah.
Right before the end. Awesome.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was great. That was definitely just like a bump. It was great. Eric wants to know about how other companies promote the lifelong learning. It went away from me. Culture at their organization. And hey, Eric Rowland, we haven't seen you in a while. Glad you're back. Mine is my organization offers free tuition. So but what's interesting is it's one of the least used employee benefits that's here, which I think is crazy because it's free tuition. I feel like time's going to tick by anyway. Why would you not want to take advantage of that while you're here if you're in a position to take classes and always learn? So yeah, come on over to Ohio State, Eric. We'd love to have you. I know you're in New York, but yeah, come on over and we'll give you some of those free tuitions. What about you, J Rock? What about the learning culture at where you're at?
Well, where I am, we started off, we were part of a bigger company called Pfizer, and they carved us out. And so it was a really unique opportunity because we had this large multinational corporation, but we also were kind of a startup. We got to hit the reset button and say, what kind of a culture do we want to have? How do we want to treat each other? How do we want to... Because, there's studies that show, if your workplace stresses you out, you may think, well, I leave that at work and I don't take it home with me. But kids of parents that are in that situation tended to perform poorly at school. They got in more fights. You do bring it home. And so it's important to engage the culture and say, hey, we want a place where we treat each other right, where we recognize that we're all human, and where we're trying, when we have these difficult conversations, we go towards, the mindset of building the other person up instead of putting them in their place. And so I have a training I do called Straight Talk, where we deal with some of this stuff, combating caustic workplace behaviors. And I think that it kind of goes to the domain of the emotional intelligence. Like, how much do you own the culture of where you are? How much do you say, well, it's my job to fix this? Because I work with a couple guys. One of them passed away from cancer last year, but they came into where they were working and they saw that there was no trust and that it was a caustic environment. And so they just started writing stuff on the board, like trust as the foundation. And as people came in and they had conversations, they kept writing it on the white. And when the leadership came in and saw it, I mean, there was some stuff that was critical of leadership there too. He was like, take that board down, put it up in the production area where everyone can see it. And having that support from leadership to say, we are going to engage our culture, we're going to listen, and we're going to do the things that make it better. That has been huge. And it is a legit competitive advantage against other companies. There may be people down the street that can pay more than you can. But like, if people come into your workplace and they feel like they're heard and listened to, you may not be able to take all their ideas and run with them, but if like they know that this is a place where they'll be listened to, that's huge. And I do think, even though that's a wide ranging, everybody can do it, I think that L&D has a great chance to impact that more than others might, just to take it on and say, I'm going to own this and I'm going to try and make it better here. And you can do it through new employee orientation. You can do it through your trainings and stuff, have a section in meetings. But yeah, bring up people that are good examples and have them tell their story to the new people that are coming in and say, you are one of us now, and here's how we do things. Here's how we treat each other. Here's how we have patience with each other, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, that was really rambly, but hopefully
it was very inspirational. Like, seriously, it was good, because I think, like you said, it's so important for leadership to kind of model that behavior and culture, and really setting the tone. I feel like in a good kind of learning culture, like, it has to be kind of, it's the forefront of like what everyone is thinking. So I think that's really important. I was curious as you were talking, and I decided to go back and look to see like what they have to say about this model. And so they have it listed here as a new standard for the field. And they also say future-oriented model can be personalized, and it responds to trends affecting talent development, such as digital transformation, data analytics, information availability, and partnership between talent development and business. So maybe, again, they're kind of trying to cast a wide net, right? And they want it to have these future components of things that they think are going to continue to develop and grow in the next 5 to 10 years, so people can get ahead of it. So maybe that was the thinking of this. Maybe it wasn't, now we need to make machine learning. Maybe it is, machine learning may be coming. Here's some things you need to be aware of. Maybe that's what they wanted. So, yeah.
So you have 5 years to get in compliance. People. I'm just kidding.
5-year countdown. 5-year countdown.
5 years.
So I find it interesting, because you can take a self-assessment, and your self-assessment essentially is you just go through and rate on a scale of 1 to 5. But what drives me bonkers about Likert scales, just a personal peeve, is I don't like the 1 through 5, because it's like not or yes. And I'm like, I like to have like different things anchored. Of 5 is I do this all the time, and then 1 is I never do this. I like to have a little bit more meat around it. Sorry, I just looking at the question that we got. Yeah, you know what? We'll take that. Yatunde, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm so sorry. Any suggestions on how we emphasize the L&D function within startup? And man, that's a really great question. If you're in a startup, and again, there's somebody that has never worked at a startup, so I take this for what you will. It's just unsolicited advice, I suppose. If you can get a foot in the door and you are the L&D person, or you have an L&D function in startup, I think that that's wonderful. That means that organization is wanting to develop their talent, keep their talent, and help their talent grow with the business. And I think that is a big deal. Now, about a year ago, I did interview for a job at a startup, and basically their training was just basically onboarding for the product, and that was it. And these folks got nothing else. And they were interviewing for a manager to come in and build like a whole different program. And they basically did not have, in my mind, the parameters up to do it because they just let it sit for so long. And I told them this would be a complete shift for the people that are here to actually have like a formal L&D program. And I ended up, I didn't get the job, and I didn't take it. I wouldn't have took it anyway because it just wasn't right for me. But I do think it's really important to set the tone early, and I really hope that you have that opportunity and you tend to connect with me afterwards, because I have a friend that works at a startup that is dealing with this, and I'm sure he could probably tell you way more about it than I could. What do you have to say about it, J-Rock?
Well, I would say, because you're at that seminal role where everything is starting off, now is definitely the time. Like, of all these things that they're talking about in the model, the ones you want to focus on is how do you support the organization, and like figuring out how does L&D impact the bottom line going forward. What you just described, Kara, we know from studies that like most people make a long-term decision about a company within the first 6 weeks that they're hired. And I've said this before, but we spend all this time and money on recruiting, and then the moment they walk in the door, we stop recruiting them. Yep. So keeping the mindset, you as L&D, HR is handing them off to you, but you've got to keep recruiting them as they come in and help them see their future in this organization, right? So it's not just about safety training and product training and compliance. It's also about who are we and how can you see yourself being part of this for the next 5 years or 10 years or till you retire. That's one of the things I think it's overlooked that L&D can do, is we can palpably impact the amount of turnover that we have if we can capture hearts and minds when they come and just say, not just welcome, we're glad you're here, but like, we need what you bring that's unique, and you will see that you're heard here, and that this is a place where we will succeed as you succeed. That's my bit on that. I haven't worked for a startup yet. I kind of felt like I did when my company kind of hit the reset button, but that sounds like a really exciting gig, actually. I'd be interested too. You can connect with me too. Let me know how it's going, because
yeah, and I agree with Rubina. You've been very philosophical today, J-Rock. I appreciate it.
It's the Shawlnet cardigan. I don't have any patches on the elbows, so I'm not totally academic, and I don't have a pipe, but
it's all good. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I don't know if that's what you were expecting, but again, I just wanted to talk about this different capability model. I wanted people to know that it's out there. I want people to start like looking at it, thinking about it, and seeing kind of where you fit in there, and maybe talk about where we're going. And this is just the beginning, I think, of hopefully a conversation we can continue. J-Rock, where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
People can find, well, I have tried to be on Twitter. I'm at John Rock on Twitter. I'll try more to be on there, but mostly on LinkedIn, just the LinkedIn gobbledygook and Jonathan-Rock-MBA. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting. I feel like this was a good conversation, and I feel like there's a lot more to be said about it, but I really enjoy the vibe I'm getting from the chat and from being on here with you, Kara.
Yeah, well, thanks again. Thank you all for being part of today's TLD cast. Go share this with somebody. So let somebody know that you talked about this today, and think about maybe what this means for the future of the profession I think we all love. I mean, we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't talk about it if we didn't love it. So go change the world today and have a good rest of your day. Thank you all. Bye.